All right, I guess we're going to start off with something
Mhm.
that does not concern you, Hugo, because you don't come from the United States. But for people coming from the United States, there is a requirement to get an ETA visa. The visa is $30. You apply for it online and they usually approve it. I know when my friends and I did it, it was within a week, it was granted. So it's not a very difficult thing. You don't have to mail in your passport or anything like that. As for the route to travel, the place to fly into would be Nairobi. And then from Nairobi, you book a separate flight to Eldoret. So when you are booking, don't book all the way through because I know there is a different website for that.
That's correct. Yes. And that's jumbojet.com, right? So, and I think it's important for people to know that there should be some time. Like I normally recommend having 3 hours between the moment you arrive, in Nairobi, and then continue your journey to Eldoret, because sometimes it can take 1.5 hours or so to go to, get your luggage, and then you want to check in for your flight to Eldoret about 1 hour before departure. Yeah, so I would say you need at least 2.5 hours in between, preferably three. And if you don't have that time, because maybe you arrive in Nairobi in the afternoon, like 4 o'clock, and then the last flight to Eldoret leaves at 6, then the best thing is to stay one night in Nairobi. I can get you anyone who comes, I can give them the number of a trusted driver who can pick them up, take them to a hotel, and then take them back to Nairobi airport the following day. Yeah, so but normally with flights here, you either arrive, let's say, in the evening or in the early morning. So when you arrive in the early morning, you can pick a jumbo jet flight about 3 or 4 hours later. In between, you can relax at the airport. There's a nice restaurant where you can, order some good food, and they have Wi-Fi and they take care of your luggage. Or if you arrive in the evening, then you need to stay one night in a hotel in Nairobi.
Yes, and I know that Jumbo Jet, they have certain flight times, and that's a very easily accessible website, and it'll tell you everything about how many days, how many times a day this flight takes place.
Yeah, two things. So people ask about the ETA, which you already mentioned that you have to apply for ETA, the Electronic Travel Advisory. I think it stands for. But whenever someone signs up, we will send them a booking confirmation, and they need to upload that in the process. So, whenever people sign up, they will have contact with me or someone from our team, and we will just instruct them on how to do that. And it's normally 1 or 2 days before you get the approval. So it's pretty straightforward, but just that people know that.
Let me jump backwards just real quick to talk about vaccination requirements. I know that when I flew to Kenya, when it comes to vaccines, I took a ton of vaccines and I just took them. I know actually, I don't think any of them are required by law, but just out of precaution, I got updated since I hadn't done it in 20 years or so to have all these
Right.
vaccines. I can list them down there. And usually, the way that you do it, you can find a travel doctor, even through Costco or stores like that, where you have a consultation and they suggest which vaccines you should take. I did purchase the malaria medication, but I chose not to take it because I'd taken it in the past and it made me a little bit sick. And I also was told, obviously, disclaimer, Hugo and I, we're not doctors, but when it comes to taking that medication, if you're at the altitude that Iten is going to be, you don't really need it unless you go to the beaches.
Yeah, no, that's very true. In Eldoret, Iten, Kaptagat, those higher altitude regions, there are mosquitoes, but there's no malaria, right? So the malaria is kind of like inside the mosquito, but they don't carry the malaria virus here at this altitude. So the only thing is you can be stung by a mosquito just like you would in the US, and can cause some itching, but that's it. We do have mosquito nets over all our beds. But yeah, that has nothing to do with malaria. So the only thing is that if you go for a safari, Masai Mara or Lake Nakuru, they do have malaria there officially. But the chances of getting it is very slim. I mean, we have a guest house and people have been coming here since 2013. We never had a guest who got malaria in the last 12 years. So it's not like a huge risk. But I should say, there is a risk like in like I know, malaria exists. What I normally what I would do myself is not take the malaria tablets because they often have a negative effect on people. And the thing with malaria tablets is also that they don't prevent you from getting malaria. They are like your first form of treatment. So if you do get malaria, which is highly unlikely, but if you do get it, then what you're getting is the same tablets as the Lariam or whatever it is that you are taking, basically. So it's just like if you take that medication, you can still get malaria. You're just already under treatment, which means that the disease won't take as long, and because it's like from the moment you get it, you're already treated. Yeah. So what I normally recommend is just to be careful, like put on long sleeve trousers and long sleeve shirts, like this in the evenings, which is when the mosquitoes are active, and then put a little bit of like anti mosquito gel or something, or spray on your neck, on your hands, and on your ankles. Yeah. Normally that's sufficient.
Yes, and for the time of year that we're going, I went pretty much the exact same time last or this year, and I don't even think I saw a single mosquito. So something else to
Right.
take into consideration. I see way more mosquitoes in Florida where I live, but obviously that's up to everyone's own decision.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Like you say, we are not doctors, so people have to, take a doctor's advice and then decide what's best for them. This is just from my own experience, and like the same thing, like you say with the vaccinations, it depends. People ask me often, what do I have to get? But it really depends on their status, like what have they gotten before, when they were younger, and how long is it still valid. There's nothing here, like there are no serious diseases that you're likely to get, but still they might say, okay, you should get something like hepatitis vaccine, or typhoid, or yeah, something like that, tetanus maybe. But yeah, in the end, that's up to people and their medical, how do you say, facilities to decide.
Yes, yes, perfect. We just wanted to bring that up. And then let's fast forward again to arriving in Eldoret. So you've booked your flight to Nairobi, you've arrived in Eldoret, and then Hugo's vans will pick us up.
Correct. Yeah, we will be there. Maybe not me personally, but our team of drivers normally comes and picks up people and takes you to Iten, which is a 70-minute drive. By the way, people can also go by car from Nairobi to Eldoret. It's just a 7-hour drive through through the countryside. So it is kind of a nice drive, but it's pretty exhausting as well, especially if you come from the US and you've had a very long trip, already. But it's an option for those who are interested. Yeah, you can do that. But otherwise, we pick up everyone from Eldoret Airport, take you to Iten, and yeah, that's when we get started.
And how far is this drive to Iten?
It's about 60, I think 60 kilometers, and it takes about 70 minutes.
Okay, 70 minutes. Then they would arrive at the camp. Now,
Yes.
picturing this camp, right? And we know that there is the lodge and the main hub. We've seen photos, but maybe explain that to us, how your camp is structured and what we can find, what type of facilities. Is it all on one big campus? Is it two different buildings that are not connected? How does that all work?
Yeah, so when we have a running camp, we accommodate most people at the hub, which has 11 bedrooms divided over 7 apartments. So some apartments have 2 bedrooms, some have 1 bedroom. They all have a small living room, and they all have a bathroom with a hot shower. And then opposite this building is like our gym and our dining. So this is where we have our seminars, where people have lunch and dinner, and where you can also work if you don't want to sit in your apartment, where you can watch TV. Yeah, so we have a place to relax there and just meet each other. So that's at the hub. But that's where we normally accommodate most people, because we have space for 22 people there. Then at the lodge, which is basically where I am now. I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, I am in one of the guest houses. There's an open kitchen there and a sitting room. And I'll not go into the bedrooms now, because the guests that stay here are not around, but they have occupied the bedrooms, so they'll come back at the 9 in the evening. So yeah, here we have space for 12 people, and this is just another guest house that is 400 meters away from the other one. 400 meters, that's in terms of miles, that's a quarter of a mile, right? So it's a few minutes walk actually. And with a nice view over the Great Rift Valley. And of course, also warm showers and, very safe, secure place. Very clean. For us, hygiene is very important. So we always make sure everything is very clean. Especially, if when you live in Africa, if you don't keep stuff clean, it's easy to get insects, so that's quite important for us.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And let's talk about that a little bit more because we've just addressed safety. With safety also comes safety, health, the water in Kenya. I didn't drink it. Tell me about that stuff.
Yeah, well, safety, I would say generally, Kenya is a pretty safe country to travel around, especially the Iten Eldoret area where we are. We've never ever had issues here with people being, robbed or anything like that, or approached in a negative way. Of course, when we are here, we do everything as a group, right? So we walk, we run together, we go out together, and whenever we run, we have our Kenyan pacers with us that take care of us. So no one will ever run alone. But that being said, it is totally safe to run alone, even for you as a woman to run alone here through E10, yeah, it's completely safe. Like in the 25 years that I know Kenya, I've never heard of a single case, of rape or where, foreigners were robbed or something like that. Obviously there's thieves everywhere, I guess, but still, this place is very safe. We have a secured compound, of course, but yeah, the thing in Kenya is there's a strong sense of community and of looking after each other. So I think if you and I would walk on the street in E10 and someone comes and like grabs your phone and runs away, that's actually very dangerous for that person, not so much for us, because the people around it would grab him and probably beat him up pretty badly. So people don't really do that. So in that way, it's very safe. Yeah, the thing that I don't find super safe in Kenya is just the driving on the roads. Noticed, but everyone respects the traffic rules as much as they should. So yeah, you just have to be a bit careful when you're driving on the road, and of course when you're sharing the road, not just with other cars, but also with people who are walking there. Sometimes there's cows and sheep on the road, so that's in terms of safety. I feel like that's the unsafest part, right? In terms of the water here is completely safe for example, you can make tea from it, you can boil it and drink tea, you can brush your teeth with it. But I wouldn't recommend just drinking it like that, right? So we have water filters here. So the water from the tap, which is purified, but the quality of the whole purification process, I'm not very sure it's super good. So I never drink water straight from the tap. So we pour it inside the water filters and then we tap it from there. So we serve this clean, filtered drinking water during all the meals. And people can always buy, of course, bottles of water. We also supply them and they can also get them in the shops. So we also have those huge 20-liter bottles for it's like $6 or something. You have like a huge supply, which is probably enough for a whole week. Yeah, so that's also there. And in terms of food, I would say it's quite safe. Yeah, I mean, generally, I would say don't go like when you're staying with us. It's better to have your food with us and not just go around and go to a random restaurant, eat the food there because they are not always as hygienic as they should be in their kitchen. But we always make sure we are super clean. And yeah, we've never had issues with food or with people getting diarrhea or something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. And of course, again, anything can happen. And we always recommend that everybody get themselves travel insurance just because insurances work different in every country. And you want to have something that you can get reimbursed with if that happens. So now moving on to what we have not talked about yet, which we probably should have talked about a little bit earlier, money. How does money work in Kenya? Do you guys use credit cards a lot or do you use tap cards? What type of payment system? And also how easy or difficult is it to use ATM machines over there?
Yeah, I think the easiest here is the ATM machines actually. Credit cards you can only use in some places. For example, when we're here, there's like a Tuesday when we go to Eldoret and then there's like a big shopping mall. And in most of the shops you can use your credit card or even debit card to make direct payments, right? So like I do that whenever I go to the grocery store. we call it supermarket here, and I buy anything. I use one of my cards to pay directly. But there's also a lot of stuff that you like. For example, when you buy souvenirs, or I don't know, you hop into a local transport like a car, taxi. Yeah, you can't pay with a card. You have to pay with cash. Yeah. So and then to get cash, it's quite simple actually. As soon as you arrive in Nairobi in the airport, but even here in there's banks where you just use the ATM machine and you just withdraw cash. And normally that's the best. I mean, you get a pretty good rate. I think maybe it depends a bit on your own bank, right? So I know my Dutch bank used to charge me for every transaction in another continent. I pay a small fee, but yeah, that's normally the easiest thing to do. It's like if you need cash, you can just use the ATM machines. And then the only thing is, I don't know how it works with American banks, but my bank in the Netherlands, you have to make sure that you how do you say, when you go to your online banking environment, there's a place where you can switch on and switch off international use of your card in other continents. I think that has something to do with safety. So some people forget to switch that on and then they come here and the card isn't working. So you have to maybe check that with your bank to be sure that you can use it in Africa, right? So yeah.
Perfect. All right. So with your camp, you have basically purchased a package, and we're going to talk about what's included in that. Obviously, room and board. And let's talk about that. How many meals do you guys provide, and what are dietary restrictions for somebody who's coming that might be vegan, etc.?
Yeah, sure. I saw the question in the group. I kind of wanted to answer, but then I thought, let me wait because we'll discuss it anyway in the video. So yeah, we take care of people who are vegan or vegetarian, who come here. Do you have certain dietary restrictions? Maybe you're vegan, maybe you have certain allergies, or so yeah, we take that into account. So we're getting a guest tomorrow, two guests who are both vegetarian. They don't eat any meat, but they do eat like paneer, like this Indian type of cheese. Yeah, so then we make meals like that for them. So yeah, our chef is very used to that, like providing meals with chicken, beef, or fish, and then also a separate meal for vegetarian or vegan people. The only thing is, like, we don't have a lot of, how do you call it in English? Like, when you're going to buy food in your and you want to be sure that it doesn't have any pesticides and everything. A lot of the food that we buy here comes directly from farms around Iten. So it's, super nutritious and super fresh and healthy. So, but yeah. So, and one step back, what do we supply? So in the morning, breakfast, right? So we normally, some of our runs will be done before breakfast, some of it after breakfast, but generally our breakfast is bread or toast. We have pancakes, we make eggs, so something you can ask our for. We have spreads, of course, for on top of the bread. We have oats, cornflakes, milk, fruits, and water. So that's generally our breakfast. Then lunch and dinner are both warm, and there's just a variety of dishes. So when you come here, yeah, all the food is included, but it's not like a restaurant where you say, like, you take the menu and you're like, okay, today I want to order this. No, it's like we have a menu. So maybe Wednesday lunchtime might be rice with chicken and vegetables and maybe a soup as a starter. And those who are not taking chicken, they have an alternative option, right? Like vegetarian option. And then dinner might be chapatis with beef, or, a vegetarian dish, or and a salad, right? So we have like a menu, and we take into account what people, the restrictions that people have, but it's not like where you go into a restaurant and you just order what you want in that moment, right? So yeah, that's basically what we do. So every day it's like that: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then during the day people can take as much coffee and tea as they want. So we just supply that, and we make sure there's always hot water, boiled water for people to take coffee and tea. And yeah, when you're here in the lodge, normally there's also fruits laying around that you can just, you can grab mangoes and avocados and stuff like that. In the hub, it's slightly different, but we serve that with every meal. Normally we serve fruits. So yeah, so and then when it comes to like vegan or vegetarian, maybe also I should say, like, we do our best to supply vegetarian and vegan meals. However, certain, what can I say? There are certain maybe a milk replacement. For example, here, if you take soya milk or soy milk, you call it?
Soy milk.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's about 5 times more expensive than the regular milk. So we might buy some of it, but not a lot, right? Because it's still a real luxury product here. Probably has to be flown in from South Africa or something. So it's quite expensive. And the same thing with certain, yeah, there's certain products here that are just, super expensive because almost no one uses it. So yeah, we'll do our best to give everyone what they need, but there may be certain luxury products people may have to get for themselves if they want more of it. So I remember the last time we had someone actually who was vegan, and we did get some almond milk and some soy milk, but yeah, not as much as the other people would take in terms of the regular milk.
Right, right, right. No, we totally understand. All right, so moving on to the training program. Obviously, a lot of people are going to come because this is an immersive cultural experience as well as a running camp. But when it comes to training, how does that pan out? Some people might be coming in midst of their own marathon cycle, and others are
Mhm.
not in any kind of marathon cycle. You guys have pacers. How can that be worked out to where people can benefit and kind of follow their plan along as they are there, or just run for entertainment?
Right, right. Yeah. So we are used to that actually. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, of course. So sometimes you get someone who runs a 2:29 marathon and someone else runs a 4 hour marathon, someone else but is maybe a 5,000 meter runner or is a beginning runner. So yeah, we're used to that. So we adjust the program for people, but we try as much as possible to train together, but often that means starting together, but not finishing together, right? So we may start and someone says like, for me, it's like a solid run. So I want to go for 30 minutes and at a pace of 10 minutes per mile, right? So that we start together and that person has his or her pacer. And someone else might say, look, for me, 30 minutes is nothing. I like to go for 1 hour. So yeah, that person goes a little bit longer and has their own pacer, right? So generally, if we have a big group, if there's like 20 people, you may have, 10 different groups. You may have a group of 4 people going at a certain pace, maybe one individual person running at their own pace, 2 others at a certain pace and different lengths. So yeah, it's not too complicated for us to organize. So that's normally fine. But for us as the coaches, of course, we have to stay in contact with all the runners and make sure that, for me, is the main concern is that people don't overdo it, right? So we don't want people to get injured. So I would hate it if someone comes here with maybe experience of 3 days of running per week, and then they get injured because they run every day and because they're maybe excited or they forget to ask me. And then, so we, like with the last camp we had a runner who was just actually 16 or 17 years old, and he was used to train 3 times a week. So now here he trained 4 or 5 times a week, but we adjusted the program a bit for him because yeah, there were certain days when the others would go for a run, but we would tell him like, hey, I would tell him like, it's better you don't run today. Otherwise it's getting too much for you. You can go to the gym and do like a 40-minute cycling session, do some exercises, stuff like that. So we're normally in contact with all the runners individually and try to make sure that, everyone gets, yeah, more or less tailor-made program.
Perfect. So nobody's left behind. Nobody's going to have to run by themselves. Everyone's going to have
No,
the ability to have
exactly.
a pacer. Perfect. All right. So you were kind of mentioning it a little bit when you're talking about the gym. So we know there's a gym as amenities. I know you guys don't have a pool yet, but the location of your
No.
camp, how easy is that navigable to walking distance to towns or stuff like that when if people want to do something on during their free time that includes not staying on the campus?
Yeah, so it's pretty near town actually. It's about maybe maximum 15 minutes walking to the town, to the center of Iten, where you have, some shops and banks and stuff. So it's not far. And if you walk actually the other way, in about 10 to 15 minutes walking, you come to a big restaurant that is owned by a Belgian guy, where if people want to treat themselves for something special, like pancakes with ice cream or something. So, and it's also a beautiful walk, by the way, along the valley with like beautiful views over the Rift Valley. So yeah. So it's yeah, from the camp, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes walking in different directions where you can get to some nice places. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll have entertainment. We've already put that out there, and we're not going to go through all of that because it has pretty packed, busy days. And then there is the hub and the lodge to relax during those things.
People ask like what should I bring, right? What should I be prepared for in terms of like clothes or other stuff? So I would say February, it's normally warm weather. Warm depends a bit where you come from. I guess from the south of the US you may not find it very hot here, but it's let's say pleasantly warm. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but in Celsius it's normally every day roughly between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. Yeah, so I don't know what that's in Fahrenheit, you know that?
No, I think it's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit is 80s or 90s.
30 degrees
Sorry,
Celsius.
Celsius in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, but it doesn't get to 30 here. It's normally 25 maximum, 20 to 25. The only thing is like when you talk about dangers in Kenya, there's one big danger, and that is getting a sunburn. You get people, especially when people come from cold weather, and it's like January, February, it's like cold where you're coming from, and then they come to Africa and they feel like, oh, now I can be brown and get a tan. And then they come to sunbathe, and that's not such a good idea because you're at high altitude, you're at the equator, and the sun is, even though it's never really hot here. It's not like super hot. It's like 25 Celsius is pleasantly warm, but that's a bit the tricky thing with it. That's why people think like, oh, I can just lie in the sun for an hour or 2 hours, but then you can get a really, yeah, like a sunstroke basically. If you do that for long, you can be outside in the sun, but yeah, personally, between 11 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, I always wear a cap to protect my face, right? And I just don't do sunbathing because try to bring sunscreen with you because yeah, the sun can be a bit tough on your skin, let me put it that way. And if you really are going to sunbathe, you can get a sunstroke, which means you can get fever, and yeah, you don't want that. For other stuff, what you should bring, yeah, mostly a lot enough running clothes, of course. In terms of the shoes, we run sometimes on a tarmac road, which you can use basically any kind of shoe, but also carbon plated shoes. Some other runs will be on trails or rough roads. And I would say maybe better not to use the carbon plated shoes there, partially also because they're expensive and they might wear out a bit quicker on those rough roads. So, yeah. And then, so basically, if you have 2 pairs of shoes or 3 pairs of shoes, that should be okay. And then enough running clothes. And early in the mornings, if we go for a run at 6:30 in the morning, it can be a little fresh. Personally, I always run with a short, but some other people like to run with a skin tight and a jacket. The Kenyans normally always run wearing a jacket in the morning. For me, it depends. February, it's normally already in the morning, it's like 17, 18 degrees Celsius. So I find it warm enough, but some people find it a bit fresh. And the same thing in, let's say, after 6 o'clock in the evening, it can get a little fresh. So maybe it's good to have a sweater with you. We are going to visit a public primary school in a kind of impoverished area. Not kind of, it's pretty impoverished. And, my wife and I have a charity, a foundation that we use to improve public services here in Kenya. And the public services, they are used by, yeah, most impoverished communities, of course, because it's for free, right? So we'll visit a school that has about 200, roughly 200 pupils, and they're all studying there for free. And if some people like, to bring some supplies, so that you don't have to. But I'm saying this because I've had a few comments of people that said, "Hey, I wish you had told me we're going to visit this school, and then I could have brought some school educational materials or something like that." So if anyone loves to do that, yeah, that would be great, of course. Most things can be bought here. That's the
Yeah.
thing. So it's not like, you have to bring it like, okay, in the rooms, we don't supply shower gel. For example, we supply soap and we have towels. You don't have to bring anything like towels or, we take care of that. But if you have like certain shower gels that you like, of course, you can bring that. And for the rest, we have some, how do you call it? Like when you have like a cable and,
Converter plug.
yeah, exactly. Those things. Yeah. Well, so you can see already this plug is different from the American one, right?
I would just say bring your own, especially, I mean, some of the people interested are not coming from the United States, they're coming from Australia, so it's always smart to just bring your own, especially that reason being that a lot of times we have equipment we want to plug in that's USB or USB-C with all these different things. It's probably best to just bring
Yeah.
phone and put that on your shopping list. As for other things to bring, I'm also hoping, I'm not confirmed, but I'm also hoping to arrange a trip to a school founded by John Career, which is a school that has runners. So I think it's always
Oh
nice
yeah.
your running shoes that you don't use anymore, retired running shoes. When I came last time, I brought about 10 pairs that I'd collected from my whole city. And that
Oh
just
wow.
is kind of nice because you see all these students that are trying to be runners, and a lot of them run barefooted, and they're still a lot faster than us. But it was nice to supply.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good one. And yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people, they use their running shoes for maybe 300 miles, 400 miles, or less than that, and they can still probably go for another 1,000 miles before people throw them away. So yeah, definitely running shoes is it's always great here. There's lots of people can benefit from that, and if we go to the school, like you said, then that's a great place to take them to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm trying to think of anything else that we packed that was a little bit different. And the one thing I can think of is if you are planning on adding those safari onto your trip, then that's a whole different world, right? Because you're going from extremely just running shoes only to something else. And talking about safaris, I know you're not going to be hosting the safari, but you have a company that does. My tips would just be that watch some YouTube videos where people talk about what they pack for safaris, neutral clothing because of certain, what are the flies called? Zig flies?
Tsetse flies.
Tsetse flies, yes. And those flies are attracted to darker colors. So all we brought was tan and white clothing, to avoid
Okay.
eaten up by those flies and getting sick from that.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of that also. Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we should talk about what you know, though, about that safari a little bit so we can kind of visualize what the itinerary for that would be for as much as you know about that.
Well, yeah, so this safari that I organize here is basically we finish the camp on Wednesday morning, I think, right? And then the safari cars will come here and pick you up for those who sign up, of course. And we'll give some lunch for on the way because it's a 4-hour drive. It's a beautiful drive, though. It's not a boring drive at all. It's going on like a meandering road through the valley, and you pass the equator, you pass so many beautiful views and points where you probably want to get out and make some pictures or just feel the landscape. And yeah, so it is a 4-hour drive to Lake Nakuru. You'll get some lunch for on the way, and then you come to the park. Of course, that's all paid for you then, and then you drive around the park because yeah, I don't. It's obvious for me, but I'm not sure it's obvious for everyone. But the parks here basically they're quite big, and the animals are just walking around freely, so you have to stay in the car. Basically, there's just most parks have 1 or 2 points where you're allowed to go out of the car, maybe because it's a very big open space next to a lake, for example, so it's quite safe. But other than that, you stay in the car and you drive around, and your driver's going to look for lions and elephants or giraffes and wild beasts and all that, right? And then in the evening, you'll go to a guest house, basically, where we have a chef there also who lives nearby who makes sure that he cooks for the guests. Yeah, cooks dinner and then makes breakfast the next morning. And then you'll go for another game drive. So game drive is when you're driving around looking for wild animals, right? From maybe 6:30 in the morning until around 11 or noon. And then after that, you'll go to Nairobi. That's the one we organize. But people are free to have their own. So for example, you can go to Masai Mara as well. That's a longer drive from Iten. It's about 10 hours drive, I think, 9 or 10 hours drive from Iten, but it is a very beautiful park. And in that case, I would say it's worth staying a little longer, not one night, but probably 2 nights, right? So, but yeah, that's up to people to decide. You can look at different parks. The one I organized because it's nearby is Lake Nakuru National Park, which is a relatively small park. I mean, it still takes hours to drive through, but it's not as big as the Masai Mara, where you can spend a few days driving around without seeing the same spot. Yeah, so but the good thing with Lake Nakuru is that it's pretty full of animals. So in 3 or 4 hours you can see almost everything. You can see all the different animals there. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I can say about that. I I just thought of something. I don't know if this is important, but I would say if you're curious about running, maybe you want to check your iron levels before you come, especially your ferrit. And I mean, if you're just running fun purely, then maybe it's not a very big deal. But the thing is that training at high altitude, like here, 7,000, 8,000 feet, it's much more effective when your ferritin levels are up to the mark. So when you're ferritin deficient, right? When you lack iron, basically, you're not going to respond well to altitude training. In other words, like the training you do here is not going to be very effective and you're not going to improve a lot, right? So to avoid that, I normally tell people like check your ferritin levels and we'll go also for a little bit higher standard than usual. Like your how do you call it in the US? GP, general, like your doctor
Yes, your general
might,
practitioner.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So your GP might tell you like there's a cutoff mark of around 20, meaning like below 20 you're deficient, right? And they will start to give you iron tablets. But in the running world, we use a cutoff mark of 50 because between 20 and 50, you're not like sick. You wouldn't notice that you're super tired or anything, but your body doesn't respond to training very well, right? So because you need enough iron in your body, yeah, to improve, basically, to improve and to for your body to respond well to the training that you're doing, and especially at high altitude. So I normally tell people check your ferritin, make sure it's 50. If it's below 50, get some iron tablets. So yeah.
That's some really good advice. I wasn't aware of that, and I think that happens a lot too, especially in females, that the iron levels kind of go down with a lot of running. So it's really important and
Yes.
a great
Yes.
tip.
Exactly. Exactly. That's true. And then also when you have your periods, it also affects the iron level. So yeah.
Okay, so I think that's all I have right now. I'm sure we'll have follow up questions in the future, but I'll put this together so that way everyone can have their follow up questions ready once they're done watching this part one.
Cool. Yeah. And of course, if anyone has questions, they can also ask it in the WhatsApp group and I can answer that. So, and I don't mind if it's also fine when people contact me directly. So, yeah,
Very
hoping for many people to get excited and come here to Kenya because it's really a very beautiful place and it's beautiful and much safer than people normally think. That's what everyone says who comes here. You know, they always say, like, oh, I thought at this altitude everything was so dry, but it's actually super beautiful and yeah, and very safe. People are very friendly.
It's been a mystery country or a mystery continent for many people, including myself. And I travel a lot. It's just a place I've never been to, and so I feel like the best way to navigate through an experience like that is exactly this way, where you know someone that has the connections. Because if you want to have the same experience on your own, it's a completely different story of arriving at the
Right.
airport by yourself and just hiring a cab and then doing that. It's much nicer to do it in a group, and then also pricing wise, it's not that will break your bank versus if you were to have the same
Right.
experience in, say, Norway, it would be something completely else, or even in the US.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you
Cool.
so much, Hugo, and you have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks. And you have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.
See you soon.